And I'm really glad everyone's able to join us. Hopefully everyone is doing well and staying safe and staying healthy as we're all kind of working through some differences and challenges that's happening with our current health system, and just kind of our world situation. So today we're going to be focusing on supported employment and education. And for some reason, my slides don't seem to want. There we go. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about supported employment and education, focusing a lot more on the supported employment side of things, and specifically kind of what's happening and what could be happening when you're dealing with supported employment and education in our COVID world. So for people who might be seeing this as it's recorded, just know that right now we're still in kind of our work from home restrictions kinds of things. So that's the place that we'll be talking about, but kind of moving forward. So when we're in the mental health system and people start thinking about, well, why should we be focusing on employment? First of all, most people want to work. It's kind of a typical role in our society where people kind of think about, you know, usually when you meet someone, one of the first questions is, you know, so what do you do? And so really helping people kind of recognize that work and school is kind of an identity and kind of a typical thing and really essential as part of people's road to recovery. So when we hear people talk about, well, work is too stressful, and we really need to think about compared to what. So I love this quote from an employment trainer really talking about, if you think work is stressful, try unemployment. And the stresses of work have not been found to be related to higher rates of hospitalization or other stressors. And so it's important that we really think about the value of work. There's negative effects of unemployment. Just in the general population, we see increased substance use, physical problems, more psychiatric problems, obvious lower in self-esteem, social contacts, and apathy. When people are competitively employed, in addition to the income, we really do see benefits to self-esteem and really building those social networks, increasing quality of life, actually getting better control of symptoms, which is an important thing to think about, as well as reducing substance use and even reducing the need to use mental health services on a more regular basis. Which brings us to this need for evidence-based employment services. Pretty consistent across the literature going back to even the late 80s, early 90s, about a third of people with mental health issues, when you ask them, say they want to work. Usually less than 20% are currently working, and about 2% have access to that evidence-based employment service that really can help understand some of the challenges and needs of an individual who has a mental health condition that needs those additional supports. So that's a pretty tight funnel when you think about people who want to work compared to those that have access to the evidence-based approaches. And so the RAISE study, which was the recovery after initial schizophrenia episode, which was the United States response to really that early episode psychosis need, focuses on getting people back to lives and keeping their lives on track so they can pursue their goals. The original RAISE study, one of the primary outcomes was work and school achievement, in addition to symptoms and staying out of the hospital and reducing duration of untreated psychosis. So it's important that this has been a piece of really working with people in those early phases of illness, is getting them the supports they need to really look at employment or school achievement. When you talk to youth who are experiencing a first episode psychosis, when you ask them the importance, school and work are rated as highly important to them. And actually rating it highly predicted their work and school participation even a year later. So this is something that people care about, people are interested in, people want and need as part of their recovery path. So I'm going to talk a lot about the individual placement and support model of supported employment. IPS, people may have heard that phrase. And that's, even if that might not be a part of all of the coordinated specialty care programs, the principles are what all of the supported employment for people with behavioral health conditions are based on. So based on this model, it's been adapted for people who are experiencing that first episode psychosis. Employment and education specialist is the one who focuses on the work and school, as well as works with the rest of the team to really coordinate the services and supports that someone needs to be successful. One of the basic tenets to understand about an evidence-based approach is that traditional vocational rehabilitation always focused on train then place. So people would go to some vocational program where they might practice interview skills, or they might have to prove they can show up at a certain time every day of the week and be properly cleaned and things like that. The evidence-based approach really focuses on place then train. People want to work, that's the motivation. And so the quicker we can get people into that competitive job, then we can help them with whatever skills and supports they need to be successful in that placement. That's one of the key pieces to keep in the back of your mind when we're thinking about this evidence-based approach. There's a lot of evidence, and we're actually up to 27 randomized controlled trials, so we need to update the slide, but showing that supported employment actually leads to more competitive employment compared to just standard vocational approaches or not having those the employment supports. So we get people to work, and in addition to getting them to work, they get to work faster. They're 4 times more likely to have 4 times more weeks of work. They triple the earnings, triple the number who are working 20 hours a week or more, and have greater job satisfaction. So again, the more supports we can provide in this evidence-based way, the more successful people can be. And specifically when we talk about people with early psychosis and in early psychosis programs, those programs that followed the evidence-based approach showed almost double the competitive employment rate as compared to those that didn't have that IPS or supported employment approach really embedded in their early psychosis program. Work also helps in engaging people in treatment. And so one of the things we hear from teams pretty consistently is that challenge of engaging people and keeping them engaged in their first episode or coordinated specialty care program. So we know focusing on individuals' goals is going to help with that engagement. And this was showing that when people were first enrolled, those who are either vocationally active, even if they were inactive, they were equally successful to meet their goals. But if they remained vocationally inactive after that year, they dropped out of treatment. And so this might be that one piece that can help motivate people to stay engaged in treatment, is if we can really help them with their goals and helping them find jobs that they can be successful. And then kind of the last point here really talks about that competitive employment really helps with symptoms. So by 18 months, people with competitive work were really showing decreased and sustained decrease in their symptoms compared to even sheltered work. And so it's important that we really focus on that competitive employment piece. So one might say that work is the best treatment we have, in addition to some other treatments that we can provide to people. So what does this look like when we're talking about coordinated specialty care? And people may be familiar with these core principles, and we're going to go into depth of each of the principles to kind of review what that really means. What I want to highlight here is a lot of times people will think about that supported employment is the role of that supported employment specialist. And once someone identifies that they want supported employment, we send them over there, and then our job is done. The important point here is employment is everyone's job. And I love this picture because the winner of the Not My Job award, the person who is supposed to paint the lines, does not see picking up the roadkill as part of their job. But employment is everybody's job. And that's one of the things that we need to make sure that we're really working towards. So I've put forth a challenge to everyone on the Echo today. As we're going through each of these principles, I want you to think about either an individual or a principle that you are currently working on, either that's challenging to you, you've had a success with, or you've come up with something creative to really address, especially in our COVID environment. So hopefully challenge accepted. And as we go through, I want everyone to really think about what you will share when you do your introduction. So starting with our first principle, which is zero exclusion. It's important that we recognize interest in work is the only eligibility criteria. We don't wait for people to be ready, whatever that means. It's not based on a diagnosis. It's not based on active symptoms, substance use, hospitalization, homelessness, anything. It's really just that desire to work. And that's the foot in the door to really start working with someone on their employment. So the COVID moment, and you'll see we've peppered these throughout the didactic today, is this is a good opportunity to really kind of explore that interest in work or school. So as you're working with individuals, talk about maybe before they weren't interested, maybe now they are. Maybe we can kind of update that career or educational profile and see where their interests may lie. And this may be the point where they say, you know what, sitting at home all day, I think I would like to get out of the house. I would like to be doing other things. Or maybe there's some free opportunities for classes or other things that have kind of inspired or sparked their interest in something. So this is a great opportunity to revisit that with people and just get a sense of where they are and where they might want to go. The next principle we talk about is integrated services. And this isn't when we use the term integrated care for primary care and behavioral health. This is talking about that the supported employment process and the supported employment specialists are integrated with your coordinated specialty care team. We're a multidisciplinary team, and one of those team members is your employment specialist. So they're present in your team meetings so that you're all coordinating together. They're sharing with you what's going on with work or school pursuits. You're sharing with them what's going on in the rest of the person's life. It really helps us figure out what might be going on. Someone might recognize, you know, something that's going on in the home that might be impacting work or medication issues, things like that. And when we're integrated together and we're really coordinating what's going on, we can make sure that people are successful. In addition, having that employment specialist in your team meeting, they're going to be listening for either things that might lead to an individual being interested in work who might not be participating now, or maybe in need of supports. Maybe they're working on their own or in school on their own, and they're hearing some things that might indicate that the supports of an employment specialist might be able to help with. So we do know that employment rates when there's integrated programs were 3 to 4 times higher than programs that didn't integrate supported employment into that multidisciplinary team. In addition, having that integration really keeps people engaged in treatment. And so this is also kind of a dramatic picture of having that integration. We see much lower dropout from overall treatment. So our COVID moment here is maybe having that supported employment specialist join in when you're meeting with someone about other things. And so meeting together, again, you can kind of each hear what's going on, and that might be an opportunity to introduce the person to that employment specialist and maybe help inspire some other things that might be going on. Also, that might give the individual some things to work on or think about to help them become more motivated to think about work or school. Another key feature is that competitive employment is the goal. And we define competitive as a job that anyone can apply for, pays at least minimum wage, and that it's the same pay as a coworker who's doing the same job. It's in a community setting with others who don't necessarily have disabilities. So this isn't sheltered work, this isn't set-aside programs, this is competitive work where they're just working regular jobs. There's not some artificial timeline where, okay, we have this job set aside for 6 months and then you move on and someone else takes that job. So it's that competitive employment, helping people find those jobs that just exist out in the community. And we talk about rapid job search. So one of the other things that's important when someone says they want a job, if we make them jump through all kinds of hoops and do these assessments and have to go through classes, they're going to lose their interest and they're not going to stay with us. So rapid job search really says that we're working with people very quickly. We're immediately figuring out what it is they want to do, and we're helping them move on to start identifying and finding those jobs. And hand in glove with that is this systematic and targeted job development. So an employment specialist, either with or with the individual with them, and we'll talk about COVID in a second, visits employers based on people that they're already working with. So they're looking for, they know what types of jobs people are interested in, and really working with employers, going out and finding out what are their hiring needs, what are their employment needs, and really matching people to those jobs. Sometimes what I'll hear from people is, well, I don't want to burn a bridge with a really good employer by placing someone who I'm not so sure is going to be quite so successful. And the response to that is, number one, that's part of the role of the next thing, which is going to be the follow-on supports. And employers are hiring people with a wide variety of needs and challenges. So the advantage to working with someone who's working with supported employment and coordinated specialty care is they now have the addition of those supports to help that individual on the job and help that person be successful. So it really is how you think about your own role and how you present that to the potential employer. So the COVID moment is to start thinking about when some of these restrictions do lift, there's actually going to be greater competition for available jobs. People who have lost jobs or been furloughed because of things that have happened with our restrictions, they're going to also be vying for jobs that our folks are going to be vying for. And so that's, again, coming up with these talking points, why an employer should hire someone we're working with over some other applicant. And that can be part of the job development now. We encourage employment specialists to look over job development contexts that you've had in the past and really reach out just to build or maintain those relationships that you had. Employers are struggling too, depending on the industry that they're in, and just having that reach out, just checking in with them, seeing where they're going is going to help build that relationship. And when you have someone who might be interested in that job, or if you're working with someone now, that relationship is there and it's strong. So I alluded to the time unlimited follow-along supports. This is another element that can be very, very helpful to an individual. We talk about place then train. So once someone is placed in that job, they have that job. Now we can think about all those supports, and we plan for the supports before the person gets the job as well, to help them be successful. For some individuals, that's having the job coach right at their elbow, learning the job along with them, helping them come up with efficiencies and strategies to do the job. Sometimes it's meeting with the person after work and talking about how things went. It might be talking about challenging coworkers or supervisors and how do you deal with that. And so the intensity of follow-along supports will adjust according to what the person needs. And it's important that we're there and we're talking about those things. The other element to follow along is that we need to help people with job ends and transitions, as well as job development, career development. I would encourage everyone on the call right now to think about if you are currently in the first job you've ever had. And when we ask that question, typically most people aren't in that first job. However, there's pieces to consider when you're moving from one job to another. And so it's not burning bridges, it's making sure you have a good reference that you can turn back to. And so that's another aspect of follow-along supports, is making sure that we're working with individuals if they're wanting to make a job transition to help them do that in a positive way. We know when there's long-term follow-along supports, we have better outcomes. So after 3.5 years in this one study, people had continued to receive those supports. And again, it had varied in intensity. 71% were still working after 3.5 years, as opposed to 20% who had stopped receiving those follow-along supports. That's not saying that it's definitely going to continue for 3.5 years. However, making sure people know that those supports are available can really help them be successful. Another aspect to those follow-along supports is also looking at how long they're able to stay in a job. So this is actually from Ohio. An organization works with youth and showing that those individuals who were receiving follow-along supports actually stayed in their jobs longer than those who hadn't received follow-along. So sometimes people, once they get the job, they say, thanks, see ya, I'm out of here. This might be something to help people think about the value of follow-along supports. So our COVID moments, when it relates to follow-along, if someone was working before all these restrictions came into place, are they still working? Do they have a need for or increased need for follow-along supports now that we're in our COVID situation? You want to think about any questions, issues, access, technology needs if their job requires them to work remotely. What did we all have to go through when we moved from our standard operating procedures to now doing our work remotely? So think about that for individuals we're working with who now might be doing their job remotely. Do they understand health and safety precautions if they're working out amongst the public? And some of it really is engaging in that shared decision-making about if they are working, what do they need to think about to continue working given potential exposure they might have. And so really having those conversations. If the person was previously in school or in a training program, are they still involved? And again, there's a lot of technology and questions and issues that come up for e-learning and online course platforms. Any of you that have ever done online learning or know of a family member, you have students in your home or you know other people that are students or have students, this transition to online learning for some can be very challenging, especially when it's more self-directed. So again, follow-along supports can really help individuals to look at how to structure their schedule, how to be more self-directed with study habits and completing assignments in this new kind of virtual world. And this is also a great opportunity to engage or strengthen people's natural supports. One element of follow-along supports is that we help people also identify what are the natural supports that can help them be successful once formal follow-along supports or supported employment phases out. Another of our principles we talk about is that it's worker preferences that need to guide the job search. It's very important that we don't say, I know of 3 employers who are hiring. So you're interested in getting a job, here's 3 different jobs. That can work if those available jobs meet the interests and preferences of that individual. Again, it's the conversation. It's really focusing on what the individual wants. It could be the type of job, it could be work hours, it could be the kinds of supports, it could be the amount of contact with other people versus working independently. I'm a big Peanuts fan, so absolutely looking at some of the things that the Peanuts say about their job preferences. And so our COVID moment related to this is really thinking about interest and preferences. There are people that are hiring now and will start to hire in the coming weeks and months. And so just because places are hiring, is it the kind of job that you want? It's a conversation. Some people will take any job right now to have a job. And then that's when we can also engage with, you know, is this a job that you want to stick with, or is this something we want to start thinking about transition plans? Workplace changes that might happen in the immediate future. So even as restrictions are lifted, we're still talking about the social distancing requirements are likely to continue on a year from now. Wearing masks, having to be mindful of some of the hygiene and other safety precautions. So again, we want to make sure that we're thinking about and helping the person think about, what's going to be happening. And this might inspire some new opportunities. So maybe someone that didn't think about a healthcare situation is really inspired by seeing all the wonderful people involved in healthcare, and now they really want to get involved and help other people. And it also gives us the opportunity to really work together on updating school goals, preferences, resume, things like that. And a final aspect to think about, one of the principles, is benefits planning. So employment specialists really help people think about the impact of work on whatever other entitlements might be going on, to help inform decisions about starting or changing jobs. It's important that we remember, when we're talking about coordinated specialty care for this population, we do not encourage that we encourage people to apply for Social Security. We really want to focus on helping them get employment, get their educational goals happening so that they can function independently. However, there's a lot of other programs that do help people out. And so Medicaid is still a needs-based entitlement. There's a lot of prescription assistance programs that are based on income. And so still needing to think about what that income might do to other supports that they have going on in their life. We know that people who are awarded disability benefits almost never go on to support themselves through work, which is disappointing. So when we can help people earlier on, we can help keep them from falling down into that cycle. Fewer than 3% who are awarded Social Security ever stopped receiving those benefits. So they might be underemployed because they're still trying to keep those benefits. And also, staying on disability for long term has been associated with poverty and social isolation, as well as poorer health outcomes and social stigma. So our COVID moment, again, is really to help understand and maybe even help with applying for unemployment. So there have been some opportunities that have expanded in Ohio based on what's going on with COVID. So people who were working might be eligible for the unemployment things. There's other financial needs that might be going on, even linkage to other resources. Maybe now they need prescription assistance, food, or other financial programs. So that was kind of the quick and dirty, but really trying to make sure all of us understand what these core principles are really all about. So hopefully you have accepted the challenge, and I will turn the floor back to Nick so that he can walk us through for everyone to kind of share where they're going